Welcome to the Explainer, everyone. Okay, if you're learning German, you've definitely hit that dreaded wall at some point. Adjective endings. It's that exact moment where you know the noun, you know the adjective, but suddenly you're completely frozen, trying to decide if that word is supposed to end in an E, an S, an M, or an N. It's incredibly frustrating, right? Actually, Mark Twain even wrote an entire essay called The Awful German Language, complaining about how perplexing it all is. It honestly feels like trying to crack a safe without a combination. But don't worry, because today we are going to crack that code together. I promise you, by the end of this, you'll have a structured, highly visual solution to all those linguistic woes.
So what's the deal? Why do German adjectives constantly change their endings in the first place? I mean, from the outside, it seems totally unpredictable. One minute it's schoner, the next it's schonen, and it drives learners absolutely crazy. But here is the secret. It's not random at all. Not even a little bit. It is actually this incredibly logical, highly efficient system. And today's breakdown is finally going to make sense of it all by showing you the hidden architecture behind every single one of those changes.
Now, the ultimate German adjective cheat sheet might look like an intimidating wall of charts, rows, and columns. I know it looks like something out of advanced calculus, but we are absolutely not going to memorize this brute force style. That just never works. Instead, we're going to break it down into manageable, logical chunks. By tackling the system section by section, we'll easily decode the matrix together and find the beautiful simplicity hiding underneath all of that text.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to hit 5 key areas. First, after definite articles, then indefinite articles, possessive articles, using the zero article, and finally, spotting the patterns.
All right, let's dive right into section 1, adjectives after definite articles, your der, die, and das. What's actually really cool here is how simple the baseline nominative case is. For masculine, we have der schöne Mann. Feminine is die schöne Frau. And neutral is das schöne Haus. Notice the pattern? We are literally just adding a simple E to the end of the adjective schön. The reason this baseline is so easy is because the articles der, die, and das are already doing a fantastic job of telling us exactly what the gender of the noun is. The article has it completely covered, so the adjective gets to relax. The only slight oddball here is the plural, die schöne Männer, which takes an en. So, as a baseline subject, your default is almost always just a basic E.
But, and this is a huge but, check out the broader pattern. Once you leave that basic, safe nominative row, or if you slip into the plural, dative, or genitive cases, almost everything defaults to an N ending. Just look at it. The plural column is entirely N. The dative and genitive rows, just a sea of N across all genders. Even the accusative masculine uses N. It's beautifully repetitive once you realize most of the system is just N. Basically, as soon as the case gets complicated, German grammar just throws its hands up and uses N for almost everything.
Moving right along to section 2, adjectives after indefinite articles, like ein or eine. This is where you see how the grammar behaves almost like a seesaw. Compare the definite der schöne Mann with the indefinite ein schöner Mann. Because the word ein doesn't clearly show the masculine gender the way der does, the adjective has to step up and do the heavy lifting. It physically grabs that R ending from the missing der to become schöner. The adjective is basically raising its hand to say, hey, this noun is masculine. The article isn't showing it, so I will.
And you know what? That exact same rule applies to neutral words. The word ein for a neutral word like house doesn't have an ending that screams neutral, like thus does, so it needs some help. The adjective takes over the responsibility, becoming schönes in the nominative and accusative cases. It just borrowed the S directly from das. It's a perfect system of balance. If one word drops the grammatical ball, the word next to it catches it. Oh, and as you'd guess, plural simply doesn't exist for ein because you logically cannot say a houses.
Okay, on to section 3. Adjectives after possessive articles, like mine or meine.
You're absolutely going to love this part. As we bridge the gap between these two systems, notice how they line up perfectly. A phrase like mein schöner Mann behaves exactly like ein schöner Mann. The underlying architecture is completely identical. This is usually a massive eureka moment for learners. You don't have to memorize a whole new set of rules. Once you learn how to say a beautiful man, you automatically know how to say my beautiful man, or his beautiful man, or her beautiful man.
And the best news here? Unlike the indefinite article ein, possessive articles actually do have a plural form, because you can definitely have my beautiful women, meine schönen Frauen. Look at the plural row for possessives. It is a beautifully consistent, solid wall of en endings across all 4 cases. Nominative, accusative, dative, genitive. They all just use en. It's a huge relief. Once you know it's a plural possessive, you don't even have to think about the case. Just tack on an en and you are perfectly correct every single time.
Which brings us to section 4, using the null article, or the zero article.
So, what happens in scenarios where there is no the, no a, and no my in front of the noun? This is the null article. In these situations, the poor adjective flies completely solo. It doesn't have an article to rely on, so it is forced to do all the heavy lifting to tell us both the gender and the case of the noun. Because it's completely alone, the adjective has to carry the specific endings that the definite articles would normally have had if they were actually there.
Let's look at a concrete example to see just how elegant this is. Compare the indefinite dative masculine, einem schönen Mann, with the null article version, schönem Mann. Do you see how the m ending from einem transfers directly onto the adjective to create schönem Mann when the article disappears? It's literally as if the adjective puts on the superhero cape that the article left behind. It takes the exact ending the article would have had, preserving the grammatical meaning perfectly.
Finally, section 5, spotting the patterns and the visual cheat codes.
Let's step back and really look at the visual cheat codes we've uncovered here. Notice how the dative case for masculine and neutral is completely obsessed with the letter M. Whether it's einem or schönem, that M sound is your absolute anchor. The genitive case for masculine and neutral fiercely clings to the letter S, like Mannes or houses. And the plural? It just absolutely loves the N ending. When you focus on these specific letters rather than getting overwhelmed by the whole word, the structural skeleton of the language becomes incredibly clear.
Now, if you only take away one thing from this entire explainer, let it be this golden rule. German is a highly efficient balancing act. If the article doesn't show the gender or the case clearly, if it's slacking off, hiding, or missing entirely, the adjective absolutely must step up to carry that ending. One of them always has to do the job. They work together as a team, sharing the burden so that the listener always knows exactly what is happening in the sentence.
So those massive, intimidating tables, they're just simple, predictable patterns. The frustration ends right here. You've got the cheat codes. You understand the architecture. So my challenge to you is to take this structured framework and go out there to build your own flawless German sentences without second-guessing your adjective endings ever again. The code is completely cracked, and the tools are yours. The only question left is, what sentence are you going to build first? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, and happy learning.